lot of the symbolic elements are inverted and reversed because there was the idea that somehow witches were against the natural order of things, so they'd always be going anti-clockwise rather than clockwise.
Against the grain.
Against, yes. So is there a natural order to things? Is clockwise, is there a natural order?
I suppose the earth spins one way and the and the sun rises and it doesn't. Maybe.
Yeah.
The idea of a kind of a world without any social tension requires people to all agree and go along with the status quo.
Yeah.
Northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere, water goes down the plug hole.
Because of the magnetic north or south.
So it's all kind of nonsense, isn't it? There's people looking for patterns and people looking for patterns. I was thinking about social tension.
Yeah.
There are certain people who would, if they don't follow a particular set of rules, whatever those rules are, that you can be kind of banished, socially rejected and so on. And we were talking about medieval witches, and you'd said, but didn't they tend to be considerate, thoughtful, kind women who might figure out which herbs and stuff make good medicine?
Yeah. Until
they don't work one day, and then someone goes, "You must be a witch."
Yes.
You're scapegoated. The triangulation of desire argues that when tensions rise, a scapegoat is required.
Yes.
Because then everyone can point to the person, that they believe has caused the tension. They are punished.
Yeah.
And then, everyone's relieved and everything goes back to normal, and that little cycle keeps repeating.
Yeah.
People looking for patterns. People looking for patterns. People looking for patterns. People looking for
tensions rise. Someone is scapegoated. They're banished, and then everyone feels better for it.
But it's curious, isn't it? Because you think, someone who was the local wise woman who was trying to help and solve people's problems, and obviously they were making a living, I guess, so they'd come up with their herbs and they'd be given, but it was before modern medicine, so there was a lot of childbirth. They might have a herb to help with childbirth, or people coming back from the war with wounds. It's that kind of thing, isn't it, that they'd be helping. And then, so the very person who was helping you would then be scapegoated.
People looking for patterns. People looking for patterns. People looking for patterns. People looking for patterns.
You might be idealised, and then you're devalued, and then you're discarded.
Yes.
That another cycle. Another pattern that you could argue is the triangulation of desire yet again.
Yeah.
You get somebody. Maybe they envy the wise woman.
Yeah.
Maybe they think, it's not fair that the wise woman's,
But in some ways, had the wise woman already been scapegoated or banished, because she was already living in the woods. It wasn't like she was part of the village.
Her herbs.
Yeah, because she had to live away from people and then people would have to go and visit her. So she was always already mysterious. Is that true? I don't.
Yeah, you see, this is, you know,
Yeah.
again, you think about you know, in contemporary
Yeah.
culture and society, you know, there's always people out on the sort of edges doing something a little bit different. And it's that there's either a kind of a suspicion about that, or a kind of, I'd like a little bit of that, isn't it? You know, there's...
But also, I mean, I think with like herbalism, it's you know, pre-science, so it's anecdotal, isn't it? It's so your local wise woman would try out a herb and it'd either work or it wouldn't, and they'd build up this kind of knowledge from these experiments on people, and sometimes they wouldn't work. And you think with something like mushrooms, you get mushrooms that are edible and perfectly fine to eat. There's other ones that are psychedelic and give you a trip.
Or give you an upset tummy.
Or
kill you.
Or other ones that will kill you. And the wise woman or witch would have to know all that.
And occasionally a mistake
would happen. And then someone would have a trip or die.
The group would perceive her to be a threat.
Yeah.
She's got powers to kill you.
Yeah.
And then they would turn on her and burn her at a stake.
Yeah. But also, why is it a she? Because, you know, in other cultures, there's shamans, where often it's a he, but...
Yeah, he's not burnt at the stake.
No.
But women are like... you know, women are supposed to... It comes down to a bit of physical strength, doesn't it? People have always been very suspicious of a woman's, you know, a woman's sexuality, or a woman...
And and you know, you have to be demure, but you have to be attractive at the same time. But you can't be attractive to other men because that's your fault, because you're being provocative. It's not ever the man's fault, is it?
No, he couldn't help raping her because her skirt was so short. Or she had lipstick on.
And so the other thing I think with witches is, why are they ugly old crones? You know, except for the Wizard of Oz, where the good witch is beautiful, but all the other witches are bad and ugly. So it's that, you know, even back then they're reinforcing this idea that somehow beauty equates with goodness, which, in fact, that seems to be an inverted, you know...
If you talk to another man, you're flirting. Women aren't funny, apparently. Oh, it riles me up there. It
Well, yes, it does. Yeah.
Grinds my gears. That even in the 21st century, even now, someone like me could be banished from where I live and sent to Coventry and shunned because of what a bloke, you know, the sort of
and that has been going on for years, because you think like the Witchfinder General, that was like 1400, mid 1400s, I think, and yet they were still, when Goya did his painting of the Witch's Sabbath, that was like 1796 or something, I think. So it's like, oh well, there's 400 years of persecuting women.
But up until, you know, I I was told.
Yeah.
You know, me, in a mocking, you know, supposed to be funny sort of way, that it's not long ago I could have had you sort of, you know, institutionalised.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but that's
because I was a bit upset, or because, God forbid, I was a bit angry at any point. You know, how dare you express any kind of emotion other than a harmonious sort of one? You know, if I did get upset, I was turning the tears on.
Yes.
You know, so everything you're discrediting just for having, you know, emotions. And if you're, like I said, if you're...
Oh, well, stop being hysterical, Rachel.
Hysterical. And
you never ever call a man hysterical, do you? It's always women.
Could you imagine? Could you imagine a sort of ruddy-faced gammon of a sort of, you know, boomer man being called hysterical when actually, you know, they behave appallingly, don't they, with their road rage and their misogyny and their manipulation, their gaslighting, their...
The witch's bridle, which was also called the scold's bridle, was for women who talked too much and nagged or expressed an opinion or scolded. And it was a mask that had a bit that inserted into the mouth and actually pierced the tongue to stop the tongue moving.
Imagine being the man who designed that.
Yes, and that you'd put it on your wife to shut her up, basically.
But it's little wonder women have been groomed from birth to watch what they say, you know, rehearse what they say. Once affronted with the fragile tyrant, might actually do that.
Yes.
It's torture.
But it's also curious, as you know, this idea of shunning and having to go off to the woods. What was it about the woods that was so... You know, in all the fairy tales, there's always the dark woods where something...
The forbidden forest.
Yes, something sinister goes on that everyone's a bit afraid of, and don't venture into the woods or you'll get lost. And
all the original, the quest stories are all about having to, you know, work your way through the wood. You have your rites of passage experience by, you know, coming out the other side, successfully having not been eaten by a wolf.
Yeah. And you think, you know, back certainly in medieval times, before farming was as widespread as it is today, most of England was forested. It was... Even the South Downs was all trees.
You'd have lived in a clearing by a bit of babbling brook.
Yeah, and then you start making fields and stuff. But it's a process that took a long time to clear the land to what it is today.
It sounds a safe place to me.
Yeah.
You've got shelter, you're running water, you've got rabbits to eat.
So why...
Mushrooms to eat.
So in fact, you know, you think, well, actually it's a place to hide, and maybe that's the whole Robin Hood and his merry men in, you know, sort of hiding in Sherwood Forest, that it was a place where outsiders, people who didn't fit in, could hide from the world, and actually felt quite safe there.
And then as people started to live in village communities outside in the cleared area, you would become slightly more fearful of the woods because there are wolves and howling women. Because once you've been banished, you are, you know, you are free to express your feelings. Howling like a wolf.
They sense something's not right in the woods.
What might it be? Is it?
Well, usually it's Bigfoot. In the States, it always seems to be come back to Bigfoot. But yeah, it could be a werewolf. It could be anything.
A menstruating woman howling at the full moon, and off her head on mushrooms.
Yes.
Sounds good to me.
And then what's broomsticks all about?
I mean, it's a symbol of domesticity, though, isn't it? It's like, you know, into that kitchen, woman, and sweep that floor.
Yeah. So when we were talking about symbols earlier and saying about things being inverted and not being done in the right way, is instead of being, subservient and cleaning the floor with a broomstick, she's going to get on it and ride it in a kind of...
Get the hell out.
Yeah. Because she's riding the broomstick, is it some kind of phallic symbol, and it's more to do with women not being allowed to be sexual and not...
If you think about all those kind of misogynist comments that I not only did I grow up hearing, but I spent much of my adult life hearing. Women aren't funny. If you didn't make any kind of effort, with either personal grooming or a bit of makeup or something, then you must be a lesbian. These kind of, and that's seen as a kind of, that's an insult.
Yeah.
A woman who has no kind of sexual interest in a man, to call a woman a lesbian is an insult, by these, it's incredible, the misogyny we've normalised.
Yeah.
I mean, thank goodness for young, fabulously woke people who hear this stuff and see it for what it is.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm this great age, but I've only just stepped out of the fog of gaslighting, of and it's still, I note that my body's going, feel a little bit uncomfortable listening to this, whatever this is. And then my brain, it takes a while for me to think, that's because what you're listening to is awful bit of misogyny or something, but it's so normalised.
Yeah. But, also I think with the whole trans debate that's going on is that it's recognising, there's a right way to do things, and that in the right way there's two polar opposites of men and women, and they have, they're in completely separate kind of personalities and characters, when in fact we know from science and history that there's all kinds of people, and people have all different hormonal...
Well, we know from our friends and relatives.
Well, yes, of course you do. But also, the bearded lady was like a stalwart of the...
Honestly, every woman over the age of 40.
Of the fairs, wasn't she? But, it's like... These people exist. And instead of accepting that, we have to ostracise and marginalise the people that don't fit in with the right way of doing things.
Well, that thing about who anyone the group perceives as a threat or a source of conflict will be socially rejected.
Yeah.
It's the threat, the perceived threat is to a group who already have all the power.
Yeah.
And it's the group with the power who refuse to relinquish any of that power and share it.
Yeah.
So they turn whoever's saying, "Oi, I want some of that power," and they don't want the power in order to, do what those in power have traditionally done.
I think
women don't want.
If women ran the world, we wouldn't have the problems we have. It's all down to men, isn't it? It's men in government, male politicians, male leaders. It's the whole Trumpian kind of
and they whip up this. There's always an other, isn't there?
And with Trump,
it's other.
With Trump, it's either trans people or immigrants.
It's the same old. I mean, I think the Nazis were pretty.
Yeah. Eventually, it'll be the gays, and then it'll be the Jews, and it'll just be anyone that they want to get rid of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So whoever gets banished, wouldn't it be fabulous if the world thought, hang on, rather than look at who's been banished, look at who's been ghosted and presume that they somehow are deserving of this.
Yeah.
If we look at whoever's pointing the finger, we might begin to notice who the real, you know, if we're going to talk about witches being scary, then actually
we should be looking at the witch finder.
We should definitely be looking at the witch finder. Yeah. And whoever is whispering in your ear and talking about others, have a little think about why they're whispering.
Yeah.
And before you join in ghosting, ask yourself what the person who's pointing the finger is gaining.
Yeah.
Because there will be some gain, and probably the gain for them is for people to not notice that they are bullies and fearful.
Yeah, or they can, you know, they can make it sound so reasonable, can't they? It's like, oh, it's...
Well, they're shit stars, aren't they? I mean, I look back at there's one particular person that I look back and think, God, an absolute shit stirrer. Yeah. But you could argue that they were the person standing at the cauldron, stirring it all up, while pretending that they were hey, I'm the good guy.
Yeah.
I'm the good guy. Look how I charm. But I'm whispering in your ear, and the person that you are shunning is actually the person that I have tortured for years and years and years.
Yeah.
The uncharted path through the wood, the crossing thresholds. If you defy societal's expectations and norms.
Oh, so yes. So often, the woods of my youth, there'd be like the big signs on the, gates saying trespassers will be prosecuted and all that. And because that's, to children, that's just an invitation to actually, and you want to go in the woods.
And what is this prosecution? Who's going to prosecute you? What's there?
Some black magic ritual going on here. But it was, that idea of the threshold between, the sort of cul-de-sac of normality that we lived in as children, and then the wild wood. Yeah. And even in Wind in the Willows, it was the wild wood, wasn't it? And Toad was living happily by the riverbank, and then was like, oh look, there's that wood, the wild wood.
With a howling she-devil.